You know, long before we had fiber optics and satellites, the world was already connected. Seriously. Not by the internet, of course, but by this sprawling, ancient web of commerce and culture that literally shaped civilization itself. So today, we're going to dive into this often overlooked history of globalization, and we'll start with a question that feels very modern.
If you think globalization is a new thing, think again. When China announced its massive Belt and Road Initiative in the 21st century, that wasn't just a random name. They were tapping into a memory, a story that's thousands of years old. What we're seeing today, it's just the latest chapter in a very old book.
For centuries, the peoples of Africa, Europe, and Asia were all woven together by these incredible networks of exchange. And we're not just talking about trading goods here. These were pipelines for ideas, technologies, religions, even diseases. This was the original World Wide Web.
So, to wrap our heads around this ancient web, you really have to look at its three great highways. As you can see here, you've got the Silk Roads cutting right across the land, the Sea Roads dominating the Indian Ocean, and the Sand Roads straight through the Sahara. Together, these routes form the backbone of the entire Afro-Eurasian connection. So let's break them down, starting with the most famous one.
Okay, first up, the legendary Silk Roads. Now, this wasn't one single road, not at all. Think of it more as a huge network of land routes that link the great civilizations of Eurasia for thousands of years.
I mean, just look at this map for a second. To get from China all the way to the Mediterranean, merchants had to cross some of the most brutal environments on the planet. We're talking vast deserts like the Taklamakan and the Gobi, and then these towering mountain ranges. This was absolutely not a journey for the faint of heart.
So how on earth did they do it? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle was the creation of support systems, like the caravanserai. You can basically think of them as ancient motels or service stations. These inns were spaced all along the routes, and they became these vital hubs, places to rest, get more supplies, and, this is the important part, to exchange not just goods, but stories, cultures, and ideas. A lot of them grew into major cities we still know today, like Samarkand and Bukhara.
These two images right here, they perfectly capture the two-way flow on these roads. On the left, you've got this Chinese figurine of merchants on a camel. They're carrying the physical stuff, the goods. But on the right, you see this incredible Buddhist mural from a cave in Dunhuang. It's such a powerful reminder that the roads didn't just carry something as valuable as silk, they carried something invaluable, ideas.
But here's the thing. Ideas didn't just travel unchanged. They transformed along the way. As Buddhism spread from India out into Central Asia and China, it started to adapt. Monasteries became incredibly wealthy. The original kind of austere teachings shifted to a more devotional form of the faith, and it even started picking up elements from local religions like Zoroastrian fire rituals. It was a living, breathing thing.
All right, let's leave the dusty overland routes and head out to the vast open water. The Sea Roads of the Indian Ocean. This was the world's largest sea-based network of communication and exchange before 1500. And you know, in some ways, it was even more important than the Silk Roads.
So what's the key difference? It really comes down to cargo. The Silk Roads, that was for luxury goods, stuff that was high value but didn't weigh a lot. But ships on the Sea Roads could carry way heavier loads and at a much lower cost. That meant they could transport bulk goods for a mass market. We're talking things like timber, rice, and textiles. For your average person, the Sea Roads had a much bigger impact on their daily life.
And what made it all possible? Technology. First, a deep understanding of the predictable monsoon winds. These winds acted like a natural engine, blowing ships northeast in the summer and then southwest in the winter. And second, you had incredible innovations in shipbuilding, like the Arab dhow you see here, which was just perfectly designed for these long-distance voyages.
And just like on land, the Sea Roads were a highway for culture. This is Borobudur in Java, the largest Buddhist monument in the entire world, and it is a stunning example of cultural fusion. It's a monument to an Indian religion, right? But its structure is actually shaped like a sacred mountain, which reflects local Javanese beliefs. It's Buddhism becoming part of the local landscape, literally.
Okay, on to our third and final great highway. This one took one of the world's most massive barriers, the Sahara Desert, and turned it into a bustling corridor of trade, linking North Africa and the Mediterranean world with the interior of West Africa. What made this possible? It really all came down to a single, revolutionary piece of tech, the Arabian camel. Its ability to go for 10 days without water,
That was the key that unlocked trans-Saharan trade. Plain and simple. Without the camel, this network just could not have existed.
So what were they trading for? Well, above all else, one thing: gold. West Africa was a huge source of it, and the wealth it generated was, well, it was staggering. And it's all perfectly embodied by this guy, Mansa Musa, the ruler of Mali. Get this, on his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, he spent so much gold in Cairo that he apparently crashed its value for more than a decade. Imagine that.
All this incredible wealth fueled the rise of powerful empires like Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. And it also funded a real flourishing of culture and faith. Islam, carried by merchants across that desert, really took root. This led to the creation of great intellectual centers like Timbuktu, and just breathtaking architectural wonders like the Great Mosque at Djenné.
So, we've painted this picture of an incredibly dense, interconnected Afro-Eurasia. But to really grasp how significant that was, we need to look at what was happening on the other side of the world. Let's pivot to the Americas, because the contrast, it's really revealing.
Now, while there were definitely connections, the networks in the Americas were just far less extensive. There was no equivalent to the Silk, Sea, or Sand roads. Instead, what scholars describe as a loosely interactive web, with a much more localized and slower spread of goods and ideas. So why the huge difference? Well, it boils down to a few really crucial factors. Afro-Eurasia had large domesticated animals for transport, camels, horses. The Americas didn't. The main geographic layout in Eurasia is east-west, which means you have similar climates, making it easier for crops and ideas to spread. In the Americas, it's north-south, meaning you have to cross all these radically different climate zones. These things led to two totally different patterns of history. Now, that's not to say there weren't some incredible networks. The Inca, for instance, built an amazing, state-run road system that was about 20,000 miles long. But here's the key difference. It was mostly for moving armies and official goods, not for independent merchants like the ones who were driving commerce all across Afro-Eurasia.
And all of this leads to a really profound conclusion. The pre-modern world was remarkably balanced. It was multi-centered. There wasn't one single dominant power controlling these networks. The economic relationships really operated on a much more equal basis than what we'd see in the centuries that followed, when European powers started to dominate global trade.
Which, brings us right back to today. With the economic rise of countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, some historians are asking, are we seeing a return to that older, more balanced, multipolar world? Is the future of globalization starting to look a whole lot more like its distant past? Definitely something to think about.